Lake, Echo Park, those parts of LA, they actually have to have permission. They have to have a restroom permission from an adjacent restaurant. So unless, you know, the intelligentsia in Silver Lake says that the truck can have access to the hot and cold sinks and they have to have wash on the truck, but they also have to have bathroom access within, I believe it's 50 yards.
For the customers or for the workers?
The worker.
Oh, for the worker.
Yes. Yeah. So the worker has to have a written permission from a nearby business that they carry with them on the truck. So when the inspectors come, it shows that they do have bathroom access. So that's a deal that they usually work out with a business. And they try to go to businesses, obviously, that don't sell food. They try not to compete. They also have a compete clause in LA that you have to park 200 feet or further from the door of any restaurant or establishment serving food. So that's helped kind of appease some of the wars between the brick and mortars and the trucks. And now I totally forgot what you asked me. I'm sorry. You said two questions first.
The smallest city.
Smallest, Marfa, Texas.
Marfa, Texas.
Yeah.
I want to go there.
So it's pretty awesome. It's this really weird, really trippy, arty outsider town in Texas. Maybe 8-hour drive from Austin, and it was made famous in the 70s by a outsider artist, Donald Judd, and he set up camp there and he did a lot of large installation pieces. It also got a lot of attention on I don't know if you know, like George Norrie or, you know, the Coast to Coast Radio, all the conspiracy theory, COINTELPRO and all the weird. Okay, so he did this whole show on the Marfa lights, which is this unexplained phenomenon of these lights that appear randomly over the highway there. And they have embraced Marfa lights as a phenomenon so much that the town has actually built these observation decks there. So you can come to town and hang out and hope that you see the Marfa lights. Or, you know, so it's really drawn a very eclectic mix of outsider artists. And I think, you know, it's a really cool town. So they have the Food Shark. And that's their one food truck there. And they are very happy just to have one food truck. And it's 2 artists, and they do a really great job. Very, as you would imagine, eclectic food, but very delicious and just really interesting. So that was definitely worth a detour if you're driving through that part of Texas. I would say that one's pretty fun. And there were only 2 trucks in Kansas City, Missouri when I went there, and now they're up to 7. So, you know, it's growing even in smaller towns like that. So they're dealing with trying to figure out legislation as towns like Kansas City are all of a sudden going, what is this food truck thing, you know? So it'll be interesting. And then your second question, I'm sorry. Oh, how'd I get a book deal? You know, in Chicago, we pay people to get things done for us. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I've been a food writer for quite a while, and I was the food and drink editor at Time Out Chicago for 5 years, and the Chicago Stringer reporter for Food and Wine magazine for a few years, so that really helped. I had this idea for a book simultaneously with the idea to do a book with Stephanie Izard. She won Top Chef. She's the only female winner of Top Chef. She owns a restaurant called The Girl and the Goat in Chicago, and it's awesome. She just got nominated for James Beard for Best New Restaurant, and she just won Food and Wine Best New Chef this year. So I was working on her book simultaneously with this book. So to answer your question, you put together a book proposal. You can Google book proposal, and they're pretty formulaic, and you get an idea of all of the parts that need to go into the book, what your synopsis is, a market analysis, if there are any books like this out there, which at the time there were not yet, and the trend was exploding. And as Doug mentioned, you know, I mean, he's getting written up in the New York Times. These guys have all been written up in New York Times, Wall Street Journal. I mean, so it was really blowing up at the time when I put the proposal together, and I submitted that to an agent, literary agent, and then that agent sends it out to a bunch of different publishers, and then kind of weighs your options for you. And 10 Speed was a perfect choice because, just a sidebar, they were awesome to work with. They're a small independent publisher based out of Berkeley. They were, and then they're now purchased by Random House. So they kind of have that backing of a big publishing house to allow me to do fun stuff like go on tour and get to hang out with all these guys again and promote the book. And they produced a really beautiful book, but everything was done internally at 10 Speed, and they're very creative, and they really embrace the idea of doing these fun little side dishes and these illustrated maps of trucks, and they really made the book look really fun and funky and kind of illustrate what's going on out there instead of just a generic, oh, this is a book, you know what I mean? So they were really great. Yeah.
What's the food truck cost?
Oh, wow. The range is so vast. I mean, these guys can maybe give you a range of what they paid to get started. But, I mean, I've heard everything up to, I saw a guy who spent about $240,000 on his truck. And the irony is his food sucked. I mean, no offense. I'm not going to name him, of course. But, you know, I mean, you can get started for a pretty low cost, I think, if you want to. It just depends on how much you want to spend.
I didn't have to buy one, so...
Renting, right?
Yeah.
So Doug rents his truck.
A lot of New York trucks that I know bought trucks, but not new. So they buy used trucks, but again, the price it varies. And then most people bought used trucks that were not set up the way they need them set up, so then they'd had to get them...
Modification,
Yeah.
They just got a panel, a step van usually.
Right.
Right.
Unless you find a food truck that you want to convert, just make minor changes. Like I know someone now who's starting something who, she found a old food truck. The person doesn't want to be in the business anymore, so she probably won't cost her as much to do it that way. It really depends. I'm sorry if that's kind of vague, but most people get used trucks.
And Thiru built his own cart actually, so.
For the push cart is like cheaper. It's like 7,000, 9,000, and go onwards. Up to you. What do you want? You want a generator, you want a refrigerator, you want a fryer. I just want a simple grill, so it's like, every inspection I modify my cart. So it's like, right now it's like almost 15 to 19,000, yeah.
And the interesting thing
you can
also
get a nice,
is...
decent cart. Not more than that,
the interesting thing also when I was doing my research on New York is that the most expensive part of what I saw on Craigslist was if the truck comes with a permit.
Oh, yeah.
So you could get a really great, ready to go, almost turnkey food truck for, I saw a few listed in the range of about, nice ones for about 20,000. One with a 2-year citywide permit was about 80 to 100,000.
Yep.
So that's the black market right now because, as they mentioned, there's a cap on the permit. So somebody basically has to kind of die and hand it over and say, I'm done with this and I don't want this anymore, which usually they don't. They usually will pass it along to a cousin or a friend or someone that also wants the business, and they pass it along, or they'll list it on Craigslist. And there's a huge black market for the permits. I wouldn't say huge, but there's a large one. Anybody else? Sure.
Are there New York as brokers in every single way? Are there truck brokers?
Yeah, I get emails about that sort of thing lately. Thankfully, I can ignore them, but there are all sorts of people setting up different businesses for food trucks and trying to get us to franchise or fit the trucks and do all the paperwork for us. And frankly, it all sounds pretty sketchy. I don't know anyone who's gone through any kind of expediting service. Everyone I know has done it themselves. And boy, also, I'm sure, Kim, we get a lot of emails from people that just say, I'm in Arkansas, I want to start a food truck, what do you think? Like, ooh, I think you need to think about it more.
There's a food vendor project. They help the food vendors. They're like kind of union for the food vendors, the Wendy's, Those people
Street
help you
Vendors
out.
Project.
Yeah, street vendor project. So if you any question, you can go there. They will help you out. There are volunteers there, a lot of lawyers and stuff. Yeah.
And you'll find those in a lot of cities. So if you're thinking about doing it in other cities, I would look for those type of associations. And in LA, they have a couple. They have the Association de Lancheros, and they specialize with the lancherias, the taco trucks, and they act as a union to sort of get these people this collective bargaining rights, I guess, and go to bat for them. And they have pro bono legal representation if they get into any kind of a bind. They also have the Southern California Mobile Food Vendors Association. There's a Mobile Food Vendors Association in almost all of these cities that have a really strong food truck presence. And they'll help you out. And a lot of the times, you can Google it. What do I do to start a food truck? And, and it'll tell you. It'll usually direct you through to a city website, and then I'm not going to tell you it's easy because it's kind of a nightmare on the city websites to find stuff, but I think you might be able to find somebody to help you that you don't have to pay.
Yeah, in New York, but New York City and Nassau County has a two different law, You can be an easy vendor in Nassau County, but not in New York City.
There's a guy we know here named Harry who has a site called New York Street Food, and he's done a nice play-by-play of the steps, the general steps you have to go through. So I always, now I refer people to Perry's site.
I think if somebody took a plane and like dropped me off in different cities and said, okay, figure out how to do a food truck, I would actually go to vendors, you know, in a nice way. Not just, you can't go and demand like, tell me everything there is, but there's a way to do it in a very nice way where, you know, you respect their time and how they're working, especially if they're working, but just to say, can I ask you a question or two? You know, and just because each city is different.
And I think Kim earlier mentioned about how when she first started, she was kind of taken under the wing of some of the Greek ice cream guys. And I think, you know, her just kind of coming to them, I remember when I interviewed her when I was here doing my initial research, she was telling me that she kind of just went to them and said, you know, I'm getting started and I want to try to figure this out. And is this cool if I park here? Or, you know, what do you get, you know? And I think if you play nice and you make it clear that you're not trying to poach customers, that's really the key, you know, and they will support you and help you for the most part, I think. That's what I found anyway. I mean, you're always going to have your isolated taco truck bombing or whatever that happened in Silver Lake, but, you know, that's pretty rare. Sorry, and that's a good note to end on. Firebombing.
How long did it take you to do all your research? Because you're really thorough with your plugging. You visited a lot of places.
Thanks.
You had a lot of fun as well.
Thanks. Yeah, that took about a year. I went back and took multiple visits to cities with just tons of trucks. Obviously, New York and LA took quite a few visits. I naively thought I could just kind of go to LA with my limited kitchen Spanish and like show up with a camera at midnight in East LA and be like, hey, talk to me about this book I'm doing. No, they were not into it at all. So it took some wrangling, and I really relied, I have to give a lot of credit to journalists and bloggers and people that are so supportive of these guys on a regular basis in each city I went to. And I contacted them first and said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can you guys guide me to some of the trucks? Can you sort of help me figure out the lay of the land? And in LA specifically, I had to go back a few times because just the vast number of trucks there. And I found a guy, Javier Cabral, who is amazing. He started a blog called Teenage Glutster, and he's now 21, so he's changed it to just theglutster.com. He's amazing. He's kind of a Jonathan Gold protege in LA. He has a full 8-page feature in the new issue of Saveur about his family's town in Mexico. So he's a writer to watch. And Javier really helped me. I just said, here's what I want to do. I'm not fluent. He's born and raised in East LA. He has a really good rapport with these guys. He took me under his wing and kind of took me around and said, hey, this is Heather. She's working on this book, and, you know, she's not with the INS. Like, it's okay, because a lot of them really didn't want to talk to me. And without that, I would not have been able to distill the 120 or so taco trucks that we went to down to my favorite 10, which was massive, you know. And so to answer your question long form, it was about a year basically from start to finish of the research. So I think that's it.
So there.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Okay. All right, so all the speakers will be hanging out and sign some books for a while, come up, ask questions, and check out any future events on strandbooks.com. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks.